neoclassical period, right? We've talked about the fact that these are the ones that you didn't like. You know, the eyes are popping out, right? They look like cartoon characters. They look some of the people from Disney and everything. And then all of a sudden we see this is 1921. Okay, so this is really into the heart of the neoclassical period. Remember, Picasso went to Rome in 1917, so he absorbed the classical idea. Now he's back in Paris, and we can see how the classical remains, right? So you look at this one, you can see that she's wearing white, like the togas that you see in classical, in Roman culture. So you have the same kind of outfit. But you can see a huge difference. This is 1921, this is 23, okay? What other differences do you see between the two?
The brushstroke.
The brushstroke is a little bit looser, right? So all of a sudden Picasso seems to be relaxing to a certain degree. Also, another thing that you see that is interesting is the hair, okay? The hair is kind of a giveaway because you can see that that's not Olga, okay? This is Olga. She had straight hair. Normally she has that parting right in the middle, right? Which is kind of, it's almost looking like an axe cut, right? But this one is like more curly, right? So she never wore curly hair like this, okay? So who is this person, okay? This is kind of, so who is she? Who is she? Where's
A mistress.
Well, that's the thing. It's not a mistress. But Picasso, all of a sudden, remember that there was a conflict. Some of you have mentioned it, that they didn't get along, right? There was a thing. And then we know that Picasso really wanted to have kids. Not singular, plural, kids, okay? He already had one, Pablo, with her. He wanted to have another kid. Apparently, she was not interested in that. And then she meets this family that had several kids. It's an American family. This is Sarah. I mentioned her the other day. And that's the one. Now, they did not have a relationship, but he was infatuated, and that transformed his perspective. So you can see how he starts to use a lot of crayons, and there's a certain texture to the paintings that you can see here.
Okay? I really like this painting. You see,
it's
you
happier.
Go back to where he has Olga, and he has
cold.
You see how Olga
they have been compared.
Like a painting to be a painting?
Some people have talked about them as being almost like marble statues. Okay, they're very cold, which is how she was. She was a very cold individual.
And
There, the other one is a fluidity, right? They seem to flow more. And you can see, but even in the technique that he uses, which is very typical of Picasso, it influences not only what he writes or what he paints, but also in the way in which he does it. Okay, so as you notice it, the brush stroke is much looser. But it's also happier. There's a certain, even in the coloring of it, you can see the pinkish tones all of a sudden kind of eliminating that ugliness. And this again is the same person. And in some cases, like in this one, actually it was named Sarah. Now you can suspect that the woman is not going to be very happy about it, right? The wife, all of a sudden she sees a person that is curly hair, obviously not her because of the features and everything. You can see that the features are not like Olga's.
How beautiful he paints her.
Right. How would you feel about that?
As the
So
wife
your husband is playing somebody who is not you, obviously, and when he was painting you, you were very cold.
If I were Sarah, I would feel like happy, beautiful, But if I would have been the wife, Picasso
Right.
wouldn't have made any more paintings.
Right. So you can see the transformation. Well, this kind of happiness and this fluidity leads to works like this. This is 1924. So we're kind of going away from the classical period into what is called surrealist period. That I told you is one of my favorite periods. And one of the things that you notice is the fluidity. Not only that, but Picasso starts to paint and to draw like a child. You know, when you have a child do a drawing, sometimes they don't follow the line, so they do the outline and then the colors go over the line, right? So when we grow up, we're told, hey, you do the outlines and then the color goes in between the lines. But kids don't care about that, right? And you can see how the coloring kind of goes over the line, right? So you have different layers here. You have the line work that you can see in black, and then you have the coloring almost kind of floating around, kind of moving around. This idea of some different dimensions floating around. It's what Picasso is going to be exploring in the Surrealist period. And he's going to remind us a little bit of Cubism, the idea of layers, right? In collage, for example, when you have different things superimposed like that. And not only that, but he's going to use this kind of mobility. Remember that Picasso in 1917 gets involved with the ballet. So what he's going to do with the ballet, unfortunately we don't have recordings of this ballet, we have photographs. He's going to make platforms that kind of flotate on stage, okay? So the characters are like platforms that kind of move around. So it's like basically what he invented for ballet, he was the first one, is like a collage in motion. You can imagine all those pieces of paper that we've seen and all kinds of material and wallpaper and everything, but now they're not stable, they're not attached, they're floating around, okay? Picasso had already played with this idea originally because some of those collage things, they were stuck with needles. It's almost like you can take the needles off and then they can kind of come floating around later on. So this is the Surrealist period. Now, what is Surrealism? Surrealism, the name Surrealism, comes from something that is more real than the real, okay? It comes from French surréal, which means over real, okay? So what they were trying to find is something that, what is behind reality, okay? What is underneath? And so you have typical paintings of surrealism like this one, okay? So remember, surrealism was very much influenced by Freud, by the analysis of the mind, the human mind, and the unconscious, right? So we have what we show the world, and when we have all kinds of internal things, our fears, our frustrations, our obsessions, and things like that. And so what they're trying to do with paintings is to bring it out. And you have paintings like this, which I think is very indicative of what they had in mind. So you have an individual with the face, okay, which is a mask, right? So here what we've done is we have unmasked the individual, taken the face literally off. And what we've discovered is all the mechanism that is behind that mask, okay? So a lot of us present to the world a mask, okay? You could show happy, you could show yourself as a very proper individual, or you can show yourself whatever, okay? But then there is all kinds of layers underneath. So this is what a typical painting. And then there is this other one also, which is also, this is a Dalí painting we're going to be talking about, another Spanish artist. And the idea is reality has different layers. So when you look at this painting, you can see, what do you see? I'm not going to tell you. Can you see the swans, right? Beautiful, 3 beautiful swans on a lake, right? They're floating around and everything. But then the more you look, all of a sudden you see that the reflection of the swans are elephants. Okay, so it's kind of, reality can be read in 2 different ways. What is normally projected, which is like this, and the reflection. But the reflection becomes a reality that is parallel. And then when you look deeper, then you start to see other things. For example, you see an individual there turn to the mountains, okay? Turning away from the viewer, probably meditating, thinking about things. So again, this is the idea of reality.
This is also, in this case, auditory. So, just a summary, un resumen de los periodos. Estamos aquí y aquí empezamos también a estudiar un poquito. Entonces vamos a mirar acá en el periodo azul. So this was one of the first pieces. Obviously, this is a piece that we've seen before. But now I want you to take a look. Ahora quiero que ustedes vean cómo se cambia el uso de la guitarra. How is the guitar used here? Okay, simple. How is the guitar used?
It's the only thing that's not blue. No.
¿Ah? Pero ¿qué tipo? ¿Qué tipo? There's 2 kinds, right?
The synthetic one.
Which one? You can just, you don't have to use the exact wording. Yeah, well, let's get okay. Yeah, sintético. Esto es muy interesante. ¿Ustedes qué ven aquí? No.
It's giving breakdown. Yeah, there was a lot of energy that he was gonna fail. He was worried he was gonna fail. He didn't know if he would succeed in life.
the blue eras, I put as these two, and these are some quotes, some lyrics. Let's look at some lyrics. Too young to know it gets better. She's capturing that feeling of failure. Stop. Time won't fly, it's like I'm paralyzed by it. I'd like to be my old self again, but I'm still trying to find it. What if I was better before? What if I never get that good again? They tell you that you're lucky, but you're so confused, you don't feel pretty, you just feel used. All the young space, those mean things to you guys, is probably what you guys would know. And these are his, and I thought, if something shake it off, it's gonna be these. These are really fun, they're very cool, yeah. Anyways, do you guys know what comes next? What era is next in Picasso? Picasso's next era is
Iberian.
Iberian.
Proto-Cubism. So I have those with her next era, chronologically. And guys, I did all of these by hand. I had to make tortured and harassed this poor chick. She went to hiding for 3 years. She comes back. She wants to reclaim her reputation. This is her Reputation album. So this is Proto-Cubism. He's like, I'm gonna try something new. She's like, I'm gonna try something new. And I was gonna play a clip, but I fear I will talk forever. So we're not listening to music today. But if you want to read about that, you can. This is him going back to his roots. What are his roots? Iberian cultures, but also reclaiming new norms. So she's going back to her roots, but she's reclaiming new norms. This is she's stepping into the pop world and kind of rap. She's friends. It's very parallel. Taylor Swift is now not writing about her boyfriends because that's what people always said she always did. She's writing, I hosted parties and starved my body. She's referencing herself when she was 22, where she was hospitalized for having an eating disorder. Very sad. Anyways, that's them referencing themselves. This doesn't mean he said to make it personal. This doesn't mean the Eras Tour with Picasso. I put him over my ex-boyfriend and Taylor Swift affects me in a very good way because her art is relatable and it makes me feel less alone. And Picasso is also relatable, but he makes you appreciate life. Same with her. Those are the parallels. They kind of make you appreciate life and look for beauty in your experiences and other people's experiences. And both of them, even if you don't relate, you kind of look at it and you're like, I can appreciate art for what it is.
The relations of Picasso. Pablo Picasso no fue solo un artista inclusive. He also was I saw in his artwork, very effective in the relationships he had. It could be like childhood, I say family, friends, and even the romantic partners. I think his father's name is Jose. There's other names to it, can't remember. But his name is Jose. He taught Picasso how to draw, how to paint, how to basically do what we know him as now. Some art that was affected. The portrait of the artist's father. I tried to include like an old one and then a new one until it moved into the new period, which is really the blue period next. Yeah, but y'all see the resemblance in them. Yeah, his main effect of him was Carlos. Can't pronounce the last name. The tragic suicide of him, it affected him really deeply. As we know, we got the whole blue period. We talked about it during class. This is, I think, I call it the death mask. I didn't put the actual name of it, but he basically gained him while he was dead. This uses the grief that he had in this period. En 1904, la obra de Picasso comienzo a cambiar después de conocer a Fernand Olivier. She was the first romantic interest / partner he had. Also, I said muse as well, but I'm not too sure. She brought a lot of warmth, love in his life, so that we got pink period, which of course shifted from blue, things that we know now.
I think it's a beautiful painting. The one on the right, if that's him saying, oh, I drew this of you, wouldn't want to be her.
Yeah.
I think the one on the left is so universally loved that it has, I think it was last sold, it was one of his highest grossing ever. I looked it up. Like,
It's beautiful.
it's like, that's like the one that everyone thinks is worth the most.
A lot of people enjoyed this painting, and now going into the right picture that of Lord have mercy. It had the woman painting. While he was still with her man, he had a mistress. Her name was Eva. And she was also in the Cubism era. He had called her I can't remember.
Una pintura que demostraba la vida occidental como un caballo. Los colores no eran tristes, no eran colores como la época azul, ni tampoco eran colores llamativos y preciosos como en la época rosada, sino que eran colores más realistas. Él quería enfocarse en darle una sombra, en poner ese caballo como, mira, se está moviendo. Quería hacer las pinturas ya más realistas, quería imitar a una fotografía para ver lo que él quería dar a entender. Si vemos aquí así de una, ¿ustedes miran lo que él quiere dar a entender? No, tienes que enfocarte para decir, oh, Picasso quiere dibujar una ciudad, allá está un edificio, tal vez unas casitas hechas de adobe, un arbolito. Entonces yo digo, si yo me enfoco, lo que yo miro es San Antonio. Todavía lugares antiguos, me da esa vibra esa foto. Y ahora vamos a hablar de Picasso y cubismo. ¿Por qué elegí esas fotos? Porque
But the overview of Cubism is an art movement led by Picasso that breaks subjects into geometric shapes, like how I was saying earlier. And then Where's Waldo is just a series of illustrated books where readers can search for Waldo within the art and within the scenes. So, guess what? I don't know what Cubism looks like sometimes because I can't tell what's in the actual picture. And so it feels like anytime I'm looking for the main idea of the Cubism painting, it's like I'm trying to find Waldo. So on this left image, it's a Where's Waldo? I probably should have found Waldo before I'm putting these up, but you know, I feel the same way about Cubism. On the right, we have multiple perspectives presented at the same time. And then with Where's Waldo, there are so many crowded scenes filled with like details and more details on top of that. And then as a viewer, you're challenged to find where Waldo is. And then perspective. With Cubism, it encourages evaluation of perception and reality. And there's multiple viewpoints depicted at once. And then with Where's Waldo, it kind of, I feel like when I'm looking for it, I never see it. And then when I'm not looking for whatever the Cubism painting is, whatever I'm being told that it is, I can sometimes see it. But as soon as I'm told what it is, I'm like, I don't see that. And then interaction with the viewer. Cubism invites viewers to decipher forms and meanings, and it promotes active participation in the artistic experience, while Where's Waldo is also very engaging towards the readers in a search and discover format, and fosters interaction and playfulness. And then Cubism evokes complex narratives through abstraction, and then viewers interpret meaning from the fragmented visuals. So every viewer can see something different, and every view engages the viewer in a very straightforward but fun way.
Massive shapes, as well as a return to more traditional subjects such as the human body and mythical motifs. This period showed a brief but important shift away from his earlier avant-garde approach, combining his mastery of modernist techniques with a newfound interest in classical art. En este periodo de Picasso había muchas cosas pasando en su vida. Por ejemplo, en su vida, like specifically, él tenía una esposa que estaba peleando mucho con él. They weren't doing good, they were sad, ellos estaban remar. And for that, one thing was already causing badly in his life. Y también en este tiempo, también estaba pasando, como se llama, the Spanish War. So not only was his life directly being hurt, but also el gente around him was being hurt. And I found this very interesting porque yo puedo verlo en sus pinturas. Estas son las pinturas que yo elegí porque when you think of a Harley Quinn, cuando piensas en un bailarina, cuando piensas en una mamá y un bebé, piensas en algo inocente, piensas en algo endearing, loving. But the way that he painted them were so sad. Esta Harley Quinn, it's supposed to be something comedic. You look at his face, he does not look funny, he does not look happy. La bailarina, una persona delicate, una persona con poise. Why is she painted like she's blood? También con también con la mamá y el bebé. La mamá y el bebé, like that's something endearing and loving. But if you look, it looks boring, it looks muted, it looks dull. En este fue muy interesante para mí porque estas pinturas también, the Harley Quinn, la mamá y el bebé, it reminded me of the Rosé period. During this period, his themes frequently included families, Harley Quinns, and performers, indicating a more upbeat and lighthearted tone. The Rosé period saw a turn toward a greater emotional warmth and an examination of human connections, all while preserving a feeling of melancholy. Este periodo fue mi favorito porque había tan feliz con los colores, que las temas que estaba pintando, todo fue mi favorito especialmente. Y también las temas, I thought they were so nice to look at. And if you look, las temas son las mismas del periodo neoclassicism. Tienes el Harley Quinns, tienes los dancers, y también tienes la mamá y el bebé. But the emotion that you are giving is so different compared to the neoclassicism period. En este periodo se ve más feliz con el azul. It's interesting to me porque it almost was like he was trying to go back to this life of happy and things that were innocent and endearing, but he almost, because of his emotion within everything that was going on in his life, he couldn't put the same emotion. Yo tengo un quote: every child is an artist. The problem is to remain an artist once they grow up. Picasso. Si quieres, vos puedes leer este parte, pero yo quiero hablar solamente. El neoclásico periodo fue mi favorito. Me gustan mucho los temas, me gustan mucho las pinturas, pero que yo pensé y que fue muy interesante por mí es que la emoción, it wasn't the same like as the Rosé period. It was very sad because of his life, because of what he was going through with his wife, because of the things that were going around his life. And for me, it was even interesting because I feel like it was even more sad than the blue period because he wasn't even admitting it to himself. Como que
it's gonna lead up to that. So it does like lead into maybe like how we'll see with the guitar that represented a woman. So that was intentional, framing her in that way. And so I'm just gonna show the whole. So on animals, he'd show them obviously as they would be represented typically in that particular society. So maybe horses, they're seen as show horses, so they're glorified over mules and donkeys as they are like work horses.
That's from Shrek.
Donkey?
Yeah.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, that's from Shrek.
Is it
Donkey from Shrek. The one on the right.
a donkey is in the middle? No? Okay. Okay, so anyways. In this I tried to frame them so that they just went in order. So in this first one, we can see obviously the horse is it's not the super main part of it, but the way that he frames the composition. I was reading in the commentary, so he wanted to try and split the composition in half, so you can see the vast like contrast between that. And then on this image where we're seeing horses being portrayed as, I mean, this one is dying, it looks like. They're represented as, again, that same contrast, so I thought that these would be good to show in like succession with each other, so that you can see how maybe in this one it's calm, but there's still a boldness to it, and then in this one it's bold and it's very not calm. In this next image, you again have, is it a mule or a donkey? Okay, it's a donkey, I think. And so here it's represented so that we can see how he played into his culture while also still developing his style. So as we move to the horse, you can see that there's maybe some interruption there. I think it's a painting, I don't think it's a sketch. So in that you can see how, but you can just see how he represented horses and how maybe in this composition he wants it set so that you don't get the full show of the show horse. With objects, he represented that through still life, so in everyday objects we're meant to look at it and see something differently. So in these next couple of ones, these maybe represented women that were in his life or the natural, I'm just kidding. Well, look at this. In these two paintings, what do you feel was his purpose in this composition? Why did he set it up this way? And what do they represent? And not all of them at once, but. So we're told that maybe he was still trying to figure himself out, and through that, maybe you want your peers' recognition or acknowledgement on how you move through things. In this example, on this very early painting, this one I believe is his sister, this one is his friend, and then I have a comparison where it's himself. And so through this, obviously, beyond what you see, why did he choose to represent his sister? In this, I believe it was a representation or kind of just a callback to his sister that did pass.
Then you can see her.
Is that it?
Then you can see her. She's criticizing the painting. It's not you.
It took me very long to pick this. So you can see that maybe like this was a familial callback to him. It maybe represented something deeper to him. And as he moves through this is when he starts maybe his blue period. So as he moves to try and figure himself out, this is like prime when he turned 18. He was depicting someone else, but also with his face. And then we see that he represents himself through the women that you would see on the streets. And again, in that, obviously, we're just seeing them as the women, but further than that, this is at the start of his blue period, so he did resonate with that sadness. There's something deeper about like how he felt on a familial sense, how he felt, period.
Like where he's facing, but the eyes and the white shirt in the background kind of it alludes to it. So
his compositions to look like. So we can see in a couple of these next pieces how he represented himself, how he took from Iberian culture, and then how he wanted that to all come together and show himself. So in this particular painting, this is like one of his most prized paintings. It's supposed to be, I want to say him with a show horse, so that is again playing off of the semblance with how he sees himself and how he portrays himself through animals. And then of course with his culture, we come to see that he's got a couple of different combinations of the couple of things that I've mentioned. So maybe through others, but also through the guitar, through women, maybe a smaller version of himself. We see a vase that he's holding, of course, clutching onto the vase because we know it's a woman, and the goats that you, well, I don't know if people use goats a lot, but that's another animal that's there.